This wood bleach is a great way to lighten wood colors, but it's not always easy to find and it costs a lot for the 2-ounce bottles it comes with. Today, let me show you how I make my own wood bleach for far cheaper. Because I'll be working with sodium hydroxide and hydrogen peroxide, both of which are in the commercial version, it's important to use safety. Eye protection, rubber gloves, long pants, an apron, and boots keep me protected from anything that might splash up. As you can tell, my workbench isn't the same. That's because I mix everything outside, which is where I am right now. Because a lot of thermal energy will be released, I'll be using a quart glass canning jar. I've used plastic in the past, but found it can get really hot. I bought some of the sodium hydroxide from a local box store. It's important that it doesn't contain anything but sodium hydroxide, which is lye. It's important to note here that the jars need to be filled full of water before any of the sodium hydroxide is mixed. Pouring water onto the sodium hydroxide could cause it to splash up, so mixing should always be done with the full amount of water first. The ratio that I try to go for is a little over an ounce for every cup of water. Because a canning jar holds 4 cups of water all the way to the top, I go down to about the lip down here. Then I just add 4 ounces of sodium hydroxide to the quart. When it's time to mix this, I'm going to take my time pouring this. As I said earlier, this gets really hot really quickly. I'm going to set this aside. I'll come back in about 5 minutes and we'll pour a little bit more. You'll want to make sure that you do stir this really well because it'll crystallize on the bottom if you don't. We'll come back in 5 more minutes and pour another ounce. If we check the temperature, it looks like we're about 115, 114, somewhere in there. I'll add the last ounce and we'll check the temperature again. We're at about 123 degrees. Now that the solution is cooled down, I'm going to pour it into a spray bottle. Normally I use a sponge to wipe this on, but I thought I'd give these chemical spray bottles I found a chance. Now I'll label this part 1. For part 2, I'll use hydrogen peroxide, but it can't be that stuff you get at a local pharmacy. I picked up this 27% solution at a local pool store. It's really important that it doesn't have any chlorine in it, and that it's 27 to 30% hydrogen peroxide. Like the part 1 solution, I'll pour it into a spray bottle. And I'll label this part 2. Finally, I'll mix together a part 3, which is nothing more than 1 part vinegar and 1 part distilled water. And I'll label this part 3. At this point, I'm done. It's important to store these bottles away from metal and concrete as it is corrosive. Because hydrogen peroxide breaks down with sunlight, it's also good to store these somewhere cool and dark. To use this, it's simple. I'll take a piece of wood and spray it down with part 1. For comparison, I'll use part A of this commercial brand so that we can compare the results. We'll give it about 15 to 20 minutes, come back and hit it with part 2. All right, now that it's been 15 minutes, I'll take part 2 and spray it on the homemade side. And part B for the commercial side. It's been 24 hours and you can see the difference here. If I were going to bet, I would say that the homemade is actually a little bit lighter than the commercial. If you find that the color is not light enough, the nice thing is that you can go back with part 2 and apply it again. Because the sodium crystals are in the wood, it'll still react when you use peroxide. When it's at the shade that you want it to be, now it's time to hit it with part 3. And we'll once again just spray it on. Another tip that I'll give you with the part 3 bottle is, let's say you happen to get some hydrogen peroxide on your fingers. If you've ever worked with hydrogen peroxide before, you'll know that it can dry them out really bad. If you immediately spray part 3 on your fingers, it'll quickly neutralize the hydrogen peroxide. We've made the formula, we know it works. I don't think it would be fair to finish this video without testing this on different species. On the right, we've got yellow heart, birch, cherry, oak, Purple Heart, Spalted Maple, which is soft maple, and Ash. On this side, we've got Hard Maple, Red Heart, Jatoba, Bacote, Paduk, Pine, and Walnut. And I'm even gonna try a little bit of Ebony to see what it looks like. So we'll take part 1 here. We'll come back in about 10 minutes and we'll spray it with part 2. Because I'm just about out of light now, we're gonna spray part 2 and then take it inside and check it out. It's been 24 hours, we're back here in the garage, and now we'll check to see what kind of bleaching this has done to the different species. The Purple Heart has to be my favorite. It just has a nice weathered, it's a very interesting pattern, kind of grain look to it. The Yellow Heart didn't seem to affect it a whole lot. It might have made it a little bit more dull, but not a whole lot of change. Red Heart became kind of an orange color. Hard Maple became a little bit lighter, almost a green color though. Bacote actually foamed up a whole lot. It doesn't look a whole lot different, maybe a little bit. Paduk has a pretty interesting look. It almost looks like mahogany. Pine, I really didn't see much of a difference. Maybe a little bit lighter. I really like the look of the walnut. Birch kind of has the same look that the hard maple has. Cherry is a little bit lighter. I know that this can be much lighter because I've done this already in the past and made it to where it's bleached white. We've already tried oak, and this is pretty much the same kind of pattern that the other one gave us. Same kind of look. Spalted maple kind of looks like the maple. It didn't get rid of the black line, which is really interesting here. And this is ash. It looks like it's just toned down the colors a whole lot. Nothing super dramatic. And ebony, it's kind of faded it to where it's a little bit lighter, more of a dark brown instead of black. Not worth it, in my opinion, to bleach ebony. We're gonna try to make this even lighter. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut each one of these pieces in half, and then I'm gonna spray the part 2 on the side that I sprayed the part 2 previously, and we're gonna see what kind of difference it makes. It's been about 10 hours since I used the second dose of the part 2. Of each species, the second one down is the one that I use a second dose on. And you can see it's much lighter. Yellow Heart really didn't do a whole lot. But when you get down to birch and cherry, you'll see that it really bleached it really well. I have found some websites that say you cannot bleach cherry or oak, that it will not work. And as you can see, it works just fine. Purple Heart, again, a dramatic difference here. This is the Spalted Maple. It looks like it's starting to eat away at some of that color vein that's inside of it. Ash, Walnut kind of turns a yellow color. It's kind of interesting. Pine doesn't really do a lot. I mean, it does some bleaching, but it doesn't seem to do enough that it's something that I would want to use. Paduk kind of gets a yellowish. The Bacote doesn't do a whole lot of anything. I mean, it's a little bit lighter, but it's not night and day difference like the cherry or the Jatoba here, or even the hard maple up here. If you're interested in cost analysis, you can check out a link to my website in the description. There I'll have a free PDF that you can download, as well as the step-by-step directions I use to make mine. You might be wondering why anyone would want to bleach wood. I have a video on my second channel that showcases this process. That video will also be in the description and at the end of this video. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, ring the bell, and I thank you so much for being a part of my shop. Please leave a comment below. Come find me on Instagram at MakeThingsWithRob, and remember to keep making things.